And now on Rough Diamond Radio, Part 7 of Hengist's Inheritance.
Chapter 34. Plumley pulled the Rolls-Royce up to the curb outside Smuggle Antiques. "We're half-hour early," Shelby said. "So what?" "Well, maybe he's not ready for us yet." "Let's go find out, old man," Plumley said, getting out of the car and into the shop. Liam stood behind the counter. "Welcome, gentlemen, it's nice to see you again. I'll just get your item." Opening a drawer, he withdrew a small envelope and placed it on the counter. "What did you find out then, old boy?" Plumley asked. "Well, gentlemen, it is indeed a gold Roman coin. And the numismatist I contacted placed a value on it of 35 to 40 pounds. It may well fetch slightly more at auction, but you would have auction fees to pay on the price raised. So if you are still of a mind to sell the item, I can offer you 40 pounds. Shelby couldn't contain himself. 40 pounds, he squealed. "Would that be cash?" Plumley asked. "That would be a bit unorthodox, but I think I could do that for you gentlemen," Liam said. "We have a deal then, old man," Plumley confirmed. "Very well, I'll make out the bill of sale, then get your money." Liam picked the envelope holding the coin and placed it back in the drawer. He then picked up a pad and pen. "Your name, please, and address," he asked. Ronald Smith, 3 Windsor Road, Wallop-on-Sea." Liam gave Plumley a knowing smile. "But of course it is, sir," he said, writing in the details. This finished, he took his wallet out and counted out 40 pounds. "A pleasure to do business with you gentlemen," he said, holding out the notes to Plumley. "Thank you, old boy." Plumley pocketed the money. "It's just a possibility, you understand. But I might be able to lay my hands on a couple more of these. Would you be interested at the same price?" "Indeed, Mr. Smith, I would." Capital. I'll be in touch then." Plumley and Shelby left the shop like 2 dogs with 4 dicks between them. In the car, Shelby turned to Plumley. "Before we go, I'll take my half if you don't mind, Ronald." "Certainly, old man. Mind you, your lack of trust is very hurtful, I must say." Plumley counted out and handed Shelby's his half of the money, which disappeared into his jacket pocket as fast as greased lightning. Plumley started the car and moved off. Liam watched them pull away, then returned behind the counter, picked up the phone. "Operator, can I have Whitechapel 3247, please?" After a while, Solly came on the line. "Hello." "Hi Solly, it's Liam. We have a deal on the coin we talked about earlier." 75 pounds, you said?" "Yes, fine Liam, usual delivery, okay?" "Of course, Solly." "Don't suppose you got a name, did you?" "As a matter of fact, I did. Ronald Smith." Both men laughed out loud. "One other thing, Solly, they said they might have some more of the same. Are you interested?" "Certainly, just let me know if they call back." "Will do. Bye for now." Both men hung up. Chapter 35. Hengist and Alf's return journey to Waterloo was completed without incidents. Consulting a timetable on the station wall, they were informed that the 11.55 to Exeter stopped at Frambourne at 12.42. "That's cutting it fine," Hengist said. "Yeah, and we have to find this Smuggle Antiques when we bloody get there too. Frambourne's a big place. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. We got to get to Frambourne first." "What platform do we need?" 5, Alf replied. They followed the signs to platform 5, where a train was already waiting. Its engine, wisps of steam emanating in several places, awaited the signal to be off. Alf and Hengist purchased their tickets and made their way onto the platform, entered the first carriage and made themselves comfortable. They had 15 minutes to wait for departure. What are we going to do when these blokes turn up? Alf said. Haven't got that far ahead. I guess we'll have to see what pops up. Both men fell silent when a uniformed railway employer opened the siding door of the carriage. Tickets, please. Alf and Hengist offered their tickets, which the guard duly clipped. Thank you, gentlemen, he said, and pulled the door closed and moved on up the corridor. I've been thinking, Alf said when the guard had gone. How can we find out who they are when we get there? What do you mean? Well, say we get there, and there are 10 people in the shop, how do we know which 2 we're looking for? I guess we look for a bloke with weasel features, and another with a pencil mustache. It's a start, I suppose, said Alf, not convinced. Soon a whistle was blown, and the train, hissing and clattering, pulled off through a cloud of its own steam. The train arrived at Frambourne on time. They left the carriage, walked off the platform and out of the station. Right? We got to find the shop. Let's ask that taxi driver, Hengist said, pointing to a black cab parked up at the side of the road. Good idea, we've only got 15 minutes. They approached the cabbie, who was reading a newspaper in the front seat. Do you know where Smuggle Antiques is, mate? Alf asked. The cabbie put down the newspaper he'd been reading. Yes, the cabbie replied. Well, as quick as you can, please, mate. Both men speedy got into the cab, slamming the door shut behind them. Bye. But? Let's go. We're in a hurry, man, Alf interrupted the cabbie. Okay, you're the boss, he replied. The cabbie put his flag down that started the clock, fired the engine and drove out of the station. He then turned right, drove about 30 yards and pulled up against the curb. What's wrong? I said we were in a hurry, mate, Alf said. The cabbie simply pointed across to a shop on the other side of the road. Bloody hell, why didn't you say it was so close? I tried, but you said you were in a hurry. That'll be half a bob, please. Alf started to complain, but Hengist stopped him. Alf, looked the roller. They're early. Alf rummaged in his pocket and handed the fare over. The cabbie drove off smiling, leaving Alf and Hengist standing at the curb. What do we do now? Alf said. But the question became redundant as 2 men exited the shop and walked to the Rolls-Royce. Hengist watched them get in and drive off. The bloody solicitor. It's the bloody solicitor, Hengist said. You recognized one of them, son? Yes, I bloody well did. The thin one is the solicitor who gave me the letter in the first place. And the other one? No idea. I need to think about this. Let's get home. Hengist looked at his watch. Next train back to Wallop is in 20 minutes. They made their way back to the station. Chapter 36. On arrival back at Wallop-on-Sea, Alf and Hengist parted ways. Alf to go see if Mavis was still pissed off with him. Hengist to what was bound to be a round of 20 questions from Harriet. Harriet was waiting for him. Well? God. Let me get in the house first, will you, woman, complained Hengist. Harriet manhandled her husband through the door, into the kitchen and onto a chair. Well? Hengist told Harriet everything about his day. Solly, the creeper, the Scottish laird, the coin's worth, the trip to Frambourne and the solicitor. When he'd finished, he said to his stunned wife, Fancy a drink? She did. As they walked to the pub, Harriet, still shocked, asked, So are those 3 coins really worth £450? That's what Solly said we could get for them, darling. We only paid £400 for the house. Yes, I know, Petal. Bloody hell, we're rich. Not as rich as that bloody bent solicitor and his fat mate are. I suppose not, Harriet mused. On reaching the pub, Harriet sat at a quiet table while Hengist got the drinks. Hengist, drinks in hand, walked back to the table and sat down next to his wife. They sat in silence a while. Hengist just stared into space. Something's not right, he finally said. It's all wrong. Sorry, darling, I don't understand. Since we received that letter from that Trumpton bloke, something has been bothering me about him. I can't put my finger on it, but something's not right. Hengist took a mouthful of beer, then carried on. The coins have been hidden for years, why contact me now? How did he get the coins in the first place, and manage to hide them in Brookwood in the second? But he explained all that in his letter. That letter's another thing that smells fishy to me. Sent via solicitors and the vicar. Over the top, don't you think? But I can't shake the idea that there's something I'm missing about Mr. Trumpton. Well, your mum can't tell you any more about him than she has already. She spent one evening with him while he was pissed. And last time she saw him, he was running down the high street being chased and shot at by your granddad. I suppose you're right about that pedal. Another thing, that bastard solicitor has got something coming. To think he made me show him my birthmark. Hengist stopped talking. What's wrong, Petal? That's it. You've done it. Sweetheart, you found what's been bothering me. What? You said the last time Mum saw Trumpton he was running down the high street, yes? Yes, well it was, a puzzled Harriet confirmed. Exactly. And the last time Mum spoke to Trumpton was 9 months or so before I was born. I know she saw him the day he returned to Wallop, but they didn't speak, and even her letter to him was returned unopened. So? How did he know about the birthmark? Your mum must have told him. How? When? She never had a chance. I see what you mean, Harriet agreed. And so Trumpton couldn't have sent the letter, as he didn't know the details that were in it. And that beggars the question, where did that letter really come from? And now I think about it, the letter sent to the vicar said they had been instructed to find me. Who instructed them? Bloody hell, you right, this is getting complicated. With that, the door of the pub opened, and Alf and Mavis walked in. Thought we'd find you here, Alf said. Hengist stood up. Can I get you a drink, Mum? That would be nice, love. I'll have a port and lemon, please. Pint, Alf? Why not? We're in a pub after all, and it would be rude not to. Hengist went to the bar. When they were all settled, it was Harriet who broke the silence. Mavis, this Trumpton fellow. Yes, love? So, you never spoke to him after the party you told us about? No, love. Why do you ask? Well, Hengist realized that if that's the case, he simply couldn't know about his birthmark. No, I guess not, so? Alf caught on. So how did he find out about it? Maybe he didn't, which means somebody else wrote the letter. And that person must have known about my birthmark. I mean, that can't be many who did. God knows even I didn't know, Hengist said. I see what you mean, Alf admitted. The way I see it is I have 2 things to do, Hengist explained. 1, find out who really sent the letter. The second, to get back my other coins off that thieving bastard solicitor and his Rolls-Royce driving mate. How are you going to do that, my love? Mavis asked. Well, actuality, they aren't strictly your coins, are they, sweetheart? Harriet adding. Not at the moment, no. Hengist looked around the table, Alf smiled, Mavis looked down at the table, and Harriet just uttered a heartfelt shit. But how, darling? Mavis asked. Well, we can start with the London solicitors who instructed that bastard in Steeple Ackland. He did say their name. What the hell was it? Hengist closed his eyes, trying to remember. Samson and something, I think. No. Timson and Gringe, maybe. Alf's head snapped up. Wasn't Simpson and Minge, was it? That's it. Simpson and Minge. How the hell did you know? Bloody hell, Hengist. Half the criminals in London use Simpson and Minge, Alf spluttered. He added, you won't get any information out of them, son. Why not? I only want to know who instructed them. Take my word for it, you'll get shit out of them. But? Solly might. He's had dealings with them on a few occasions. And they know him, Alf said. So that's sorted. I'll call Solly in the morning then. Next, how do I find who the Rolls-Royce owner is? There can't be that many gray rollers in this area? The table fell silent as they considered the problem. What does a Rolls-Royce look like anyway? Mavis asked. Big, posh, shiny, with a silver angel on the bonnet, Alf answered. What, like that one? They all looked at Mavis, who pointed out of the window. Hengist stood up to get a better view into the street. He watched a gray Rolls-Royce pull up to the curb. Roland Plumley got out and walked towards the pub. Bloody hell, it's them. What? Harriet squealed. It's them? Alf grasped Hengist's arm. Steady now, we still don't know who he is. It could be dangerous. He obviously well connected. If he knew where to find you, let's just see what he wants. Hengist sat back down. All four watched the door nervously. But it didn't open. He must be in the snug. I'll go and see. Hengist got to his feet again and made towards the door to the snug bar. He's leaving, Mavis said. They all watched through the window as Plumley walked back to his car and drove off. Hengist walked to the bar and called Jeff, the landlord, over. After chatting for a minute, Hengist returned to his table. You're not going to believe this. Hengist sat back in his chair. Jeff said that bloke had never been in before and only popped in to buy some cigars. So, he wasn't coming to see you. Jesus. We still don't know who he is, so what do we do now? Hengist held up a hand. I hadn't finished. Oh, sorry. Hengist took a breath and continued. But Jeff knew him anyway from the magistrate's court. Apparently, our Rolls-Royce cigar-smoking coin-thieving bastard is chairman of the Licensed Victualers Committee, and is no less a person than Ronald Plumley, brother of Sir Tarquin, Lord of the Manor. Bloody hell. Yes, bloody hell is right, sweetheart. Chapter 37. On the dot of 9 a.m., Hengist picked up the phone. The operator answered with a cheery, Good morning. Number, please. Whitechapel 3247, please. Putting you through, caller. There followed a series of clicks and crackles, then Solly came on the line. Hello. Solly, it's Hengist. Everything all right, Hengist? Not decided to cash in the other 2 coins you have by any chance? Not yet, Solly. But it is about the coins, the other 27 coins, you know, the ones that went south. Oh yes. Well, we know who took them. You do? That was quick work, I must say. We also know, Hengist continued, the original letter about my inheritance was a fake. A fake? It's a long story, but yes, we think we've been spun a yarn. Anyway, the letter that kicked all this off originated from a London firm of solicitors. Oh yes, Solly's voice had taken on a cautious tone. Alf says you've dealt with them in the past. Do these solicitors have a name, Hengist? Of course. Stimson and Minge. Did Hengist detect a slight pause before Solly replied? I'm impressed, Hengist. Yes, I've dealt with them. And if you know that, you know they are not to be fooled with. So Alf said. So how can I help? We know they sent the letter, but we don't know on whose behalf. I was wondering if you could find out. Solly was silent for a while. I'll see what I can do, but Stimson and Minge are known for being difficult. Could we bribe someone there for the information? Hengist suggested. That would be my first thought, but the people who run Stimson and Minge, and nobody knows who they are. Pick their people very well, and if the attempt to undermine their reputation for confidentiality got out, well, let's just say it could be difficult. But I just might have something I can trade with. I'll call you back in a while. Before Hengist could probe any more, Solly rang off. Hengist sat down, poured another cup of tea, and waited. Solly called back within 20 minutes. Hengist? Yes, Solly. I've got the information you asked for. And it wasn't easy. That's great. How did you do it? Hengist asked. I knew something they didn't. I don't understand. I had information that might be of use to them. So we did a trade, simple as that. Trade? Let's just say a certain watchman, due to give evidence next week, will come into a financial windfall tomorrow. Sadly, this windfall will come at the same time as his memory for faces becomes impaired. I see, and the information we received in return? Well, the story is, approximately 24 months ago, a lady called into their office, handed them a sealed letter. This letter was to be delivered on or as close as possible to September 13, 1939. She insisted on using Stimson and Minge. She paid their fee up front and left. They never heard from her again. Does any of that ring any bells? Only the date. It was my 21st birthday. And 24 months ago means that this was well planned. Do we have a name and address for this woman, Solly? Yes, we do. It's Mrs. Winifred Tatler of 4 Wellbrook Crescent, Upper Windham. That's only 10 miles away from me. Well, that's who sent the letter, Hengist. Yes, thanks, Solly. Great work. I'll be in touch about the other coins, and we'll square up then if that's okay. Fine, Hengist. They rang off. Hengist sat down and relayed the conversation he'd just had with Solly to Harriet. When he'd finished, she said, Well, what? What happens next? I think a trip to Upper Windham is called for. If you want food this evening, I need to do some shopping, darling, said Harriet. No problem, sweetheart, you go shopping, and I'll nip to Upper Windham to see this Winifred Tatler woman. Sure, you don't want me to come with you? No, it's fine, sweetheart, I'll be okay. I'll just finish my tea and I'll be off. There came a knock at the door and Alf walked in. Hello both. I just thought I'd pop in to see what Solly had to say. Any tea in that pot? Of course, Alf, said Harriet, fetching a cup off the dresser. So what did Solly have to say? Alf asked. Hengist told him. When he'd finished, Alf said, What are you going to do about all this, Hengist? Well, I'm going to find out why that letter was sent to me. And I'm going to get those bloody coins back. Harriet just looked at the ceiling and said under her breath, I bloody knew it. God help us. What was that, pet? Hengist asked. Nothing, I just said good, who can help us? I'm not sure about that yet, sweetheart. Alf, you said my father used to plan this type of thing. What do you think he would do? Not sure. As I've said, Davy kept things very close to his chest, to say the least. But I do know he would find out as much detail as he could first on the mark, and always make a backup plan just in case things go pear-shaped. Mark? What's a mark? The target of the job, Alf explained. Oh, I get it. Well, as I see it, we have 2 jobs. One is to find out who was behind the letter. Solly has given us a start with that, which I'll investigate in a bit. And the second job is to get those coins back. Now we know who has them, but we don't know where they keep them. Also, we can't just go in and take them back, wherever they are. Because it wouldn't take a genius to work out who took them. We got to do it in a way that leaves us spotless and in the clear. How are you going to do that? Harriet asked. I don't bloody know, yet. Time is also a factor here, because if they sell them, they're gone forever. The first thing to do is find where they've pugged them coins away, Alf said. Maybe a good starting point would be Mabel Pringle, up at the Hall. There's no love lost between her and Ronald Plumley, mused Hengist. Things like this job requires money to set up. Where are you going to get that? Alf said. Solly can place the other 2 coins we have. No. Hengist, Harriet squealed. Those coins would pay the mortgage off. Yes, I know, Petal, but... Bugger butt. I won't let you do it, Harriet said angrily. Okay, Petal, keep your hair on, we'll see what we can do. Solly has 1 coin already, that will give us something to work with. Just let me know if I can help, lad, Alf said, placing his cup back on its saucer and getting up from the table. Smiling, he added, "It's just like old times." As he reached the door, Hengist said, "By the way, Alf, what did you used to do on these jobs for my father?" "Nothing much, I was just muscle. You know, if something needs breaking down or smashing up, or something heavy needed moving." Hengist simply nodded. When Alf had left, Hengist turned to Harriet. "Okay, you do the shopping, Petal, and I'll go see this woman. Then we'll go have a word with Mabel. Is that okay?" Harriet turned to face her husband. "Hengist, if you waste this windfall we've come into by chasing the other coins when we could pay off the mortgage, I'll cut your balls off and feed them to him." She pointed to Nobby asleep on a mat in the corner. "I hear you, sweet pea, I hear you," placated her husband. "Good, 'cause I bloody mean it." Hengist gave his wife a peck on the cheek, by way of reassurance. As he was leaving, he said, "Don't worry, sweet pea, I'll sort it. See you about 12 o'clock and we'll take a ride up to the hall." He received a "If you say so" in reply. Chapter 38. Shelby sat behind his desk, daydreaming of how he was going to spend the money he was going to get from the sale of the coins. Doris could be heard tip-tapping away on her typewriter in the outer office. Shelby looked at the untouched pile of paperwork on his desk that was his day's work and sighed. He rose out of his chair, walked over and opened the door. "Doris, a cup of tea. And sometime this week if you can tear yourself away from that infernal machine." He closed the door. Back behind his desk, he picked up the top file off the pile to relieve the boredom more than an attempt at doing some work. Doris offered the now obligatory two-fingered salute to the closed door. Then, gritting her teeth, finished the sentence she was typing, then went off to make the tea. When the tea was ready, she took it into Shelby's office, dropping the cup and saucer the last inch onto the desk before turning around to leave without a word. As she reached the door, Shelby called out, "Get me Ronald Plumley on the phone." "A please would be nice, Mr. Shelby." "I pay you to type letters and answer the phone, Doris, not to give me lessons in manners. So just get back to your desk and get me Ronald Plumley on the phone." Doris closed the door with a slam. She considered going back in to Shelby and telling him to go fuck himself, but she needed this job. So she picked up the phone, dialed Ronald Plumley's the number at the hall. On the fifth ring, Plumley answered with a gruff, "Who are you? What do you want?" "Mr. Plumley, I've Mr. Shelby on the phone for you." "Jesus, what does he want?" Without answering, Doris flicked a switch on the phone, and she heard the extension on Shelby's desk ring. Shelby picked it up. Again, without a word, Doris flicked the switch back and heard Plumley's voice. "Shelby, what the hell do you want now?" Doris was just about to put her handset back in its cradle when Shelby said, "I was wondering when I'll get my money." Doris continued, listening. "Bloody hell, Shelby, we only got those coins a couple of days ago, for God's sake," Plumley said. "Yes, but remember, we only got those coins because of my skill in obtaining profitable information." "Skill, bloody skill. You opened a letter meant for somebody else, which is illegal, by the way, don't forget that, old boy. And you don't need skill for that, just a nosy criminal bent and some sealing wax. But half of those coins in your safe are mine." "Of course they are, old man. What do you suggest we do then?" "I think we should take them to that dealer straight away and offload them before that fellow Grump puts two and two together and comes looking for his property. Take the coins to the dealer, what, all 27 of them. That should be a good way of getting people asking questions. And besides, the last time I saw that Grump fellow, he was sparked out, and not in a state to put anything with anything else, let alone come looking for it. I still think we should offload them, Ronald. We should wait a bit, old man, sell them in ones and twos over a few months or so." "But I want the money, Ronald." "I tell you what, old fruit, come over tonight and we'll talk about it and see if we can put a plan together. That suit you, old boy?" I suppose so, Ronald, I suppose so. I'll be with you at 7 o'clock. Capital, capital. See you then, old boy. Shelby hung up smartly, followed by Doris. Doris sat there taking in what she'd just heard. She knew Shelby was an unpleasant, slimy, inept arsehole, but a criminal. Her senior boss, Mr. Smithfield, wasn't able to help her, as he was getting over a very tricky operation at his sister in South Argyle, and Doris wasn't sure she could contact him anyway. What should she do? She couldn't just sit there and do nothing. Chapter 39. Hengist, after stopping 3 times for directions, eventually turned into Wellbrook Crescent. He was impressed. It was without doubt an affluent neighborhood. Each house sported a pristine and well-tendered garden. Clipped hedges, raked gravel drives, and glossy paintwork was the norm. Pulling up outside number 4, Hengist removed his overalls and leather helmet, brushing the fluff the best he could off his clothes. He ran his fingers through his hair in an attempt to make himself more presentable. Walking towards the house, he noticed the net curtain in one of the front windows move. Well, he thought, at least someone was at home. Reaching the pea-green door, he used the shiny brass knocker to rap on the door. He waited a minute with no reply, so he rapped again. After a further minute's wait, a person could be seen through the stained glass panels approaching. The lock was disengaged and the door opened a crack. A young woman's face appeared. "Yes, can I help you?" the woman asked. "I do hope so, miss. I'm looking for a Mrs. Winifred Tatler." "What do you want her for?" "It's a private matter." "Oh, then, she's not in," the woman said, slamming the door shut. Hengist rapped again on the door, this time more forcefully. The door swung fully open this time, and the young lady stood on the threshold, hand on her hips. "I told you she's not seeing anyone." "So she is in," Hengist said. "No, she's not." Hengist bristled. "Look, love, I don't know if you're the hired help, or just here reading the gas meter. Just go and inform Mrs. Tatler that Hengist Grump is here to discuss a letter she sent to me via Simpson and Minge solicitors." The young woman huffed but stepped aside. "I suppose you'd better come in then. Best you wait in the study." She led the way through an opulent hallway. Opening a door to smaller room, she said, "Take a seat." Hengist walked in and sat in a chair in front of a small desk. The young woman closed the door behind them, walked around to the other side of the desk and sat down. "So what do you want?" she asked. "You're Mrs. Tatler?" "I'm a miss, actually, but what's in a name?" "Well, that's nice, but I want to speak to Mrs. Tatler, the lady of the house. If it's not too much trouble." "If you want to speak to, as you put it, the lady of the house, you're doing just that. But if you want to speak to Mrs. Winifred Tatler, it's not so much troublesome as impossible. Mind you, you could always try speaking very loudly or employ a medium. She passed away 18 months ago." "You mean Mrs. Tatler is dead?" "I do very much hope so. We buried her." "Oh. Yes, oh. You've got me or nobody. So what this all about?" "Well, it's... You said something about a letter." Hengist regained a bit of composure. "Yes, sorry. It's just I received a letter from a solicitor. And this letter was instructed to be passed on to me by a Mrs. Winifred Tatler at this address. I assume that is your mother?" "Yep, that's her all right. And I'd like to know why she sent the letter to me." "Didn't the letter explain that to you then?" "No." "When was this? I mean, my mother been dead 18 months. "Well, the solicitor was instructed 2 years ago, but the letter arrived this week. I know the post can be slow on occasions, but 2 years late?" No. The instructions were to send the letter to get to me on 13th of September this year." "Very strange. Are you sure my mother sent it?" Hengist considered this. He wasn't sure, but Solly must be. So answered. "Yes, I am. Is there a Mr. Tatler we could speak to?" Nope, I'm afraid not. Both my parents are dead, Mr. Grump. Or may I call you Hengist? You did say your name was Hengist, didn't you? Hengist nodded confirmation of this. And please call me Josephine. Miss this and Mrs. That is so formal, don't you think? Yes, indeed. So, Josephine, you know nothing of the letter, or Simpson and Minge? Again, no, sorry, Hengist never heard of them. Hengist realized that he'd reached a brick wall. Raised himself out of his chair. Well, I'm sorry to have troubled you, Josephine. Someone must have their wires crossed. May I leave my number with you, on the off chance you remember anything? Certainly you may, Hengist, Josephine said, pushing a pen and piece of paper across the desk. Hengist scribbled down his number and his address. Then, after Josephine had promised to get in touch if she remembered anything, Hengist apologized again for troubling her. He left. The door closed behind him, and he walked back to the motorbike combination and was soon traveling home. As Hengist cruised through country lanes, a red telephone box appeared down the road. He pulled up and entered the box. Soon he was pressing button B, and Solly came on the line. Hengist explained that the visit had gleaned nothing. Are you sure that was the name of the person who sent the letter, Solly? Hengist said. That's what I was told, Hengist, but I'll ask around and see if there is anything more I can get if you want. Please do that, Solly. Call me when you have something. And Solly. Yes, Hengist. I might have a few more of those coins to trade soon. 2, Solly inquired. No, 29 inches. Solly could be heard chuckling down the line. Thought you might, he said, and hung up. Hengist continued his way home. Chapter 40. Doris had spent the whole morning and half the afternoon fretting over what she should do. Should she confront Shelby and make him give everything back? No, he'd never listen to her. Should she inform the police straight away? Yes. She'd tell the police. That would cook his goose and serve the bastard right. But Mr. Henderson's had once told her the relationship between a solicitor and his client is as a doctor and patient, where no detail of it should be divulged to anyone without the permission of the client. Would she be breaking the law by going to the police? Her thoughts were cut short as she became aware that Shelby was in front of her saying something. So sorry, Mr. Shelby, I was miles away. So I noticed, Doris. You'd better pull your socks up, my lady, or you'll be looking for another job. Yes. Mr. Shelby, I'm sorry, you were saying. Well, I'll make it quick so as not to interrupt your daydreaming for too long. I'm finishing now as I have an important meeting at the golf club, so you'll need to lock up tonight. Yes, Mr. Shelby. Shelby looked with disdain at Doris. What, no caustic comments, no huffing and puffing at me finishing early? Doris just shrugged. You're getting slack in your old age, Doris. Shelby, laughing, left the office. Doris made up her mind on the course of action she was going to take. Jumping out of her seat, she rushed to the window, just in time to watch Shelby drive away. She crossed the office to a row of filing cabinets. Opening one, she flicked through the files within. On finding the one she was looking for, removed it and started to scan the first page. Reading for only a moment, she had the information she was after. She then put on her hat and coat, locked the front door, giving it a bump with her hip to check it was closed properly. She crossed the road to the bus stop. After a wait of 10 minutes, a bus arrived. Doris boarded the vehicle, paid her fare, and took a seat for the journey to Wallop-on-Sea. Chapter 41. When Hengist returned home, he happily found his wife in a better mood. How did it go, darling? Find out anything worthwhile? She asked. Hengist slumped down onto a chair. The old woman, Mrs. Tatler, is dead. She died 18 months ago. So that conversation was one-sided. I did get to speak to her daughter, but nothing. I've asked Solly to ask around. But it looks like Mrs. Tatler is a dead end. Literally. Oh, very droll. A cheese sandwich for lunch, okay? We got any beetroot? Hengist asked. Yep, we have, as it happens. Well, a cheese and beetroot sandwich would be lovely, sweet pea. So, that Mrs. Tatler's daughter couldn't help either, could she? Harriet said while starting to assemble the requested sandwich. No, she said she didn't know anything about any letter and had never heard of William Trumpton. Did you believe her? Harriet said while assembling the sandwich. She seemed genuine enough. Also, she couldn't have been more than 25 years of age. But you should see the house she lives in, it makes this place look like a hovel. My house looks like a hovel. No, don't be silly, but this house was stunning, darling. She can't be short of a bob or two. Mention the word hovel in the same sentence as our home again, and you'll be making your own bloody sandwiches. She placed the finished sandwich on the table with a clatter. So when you've got that down your neck, we're off to the hall, are we? Harriet asked. We have to start somewhere, Petal. As Hengist finished his sandwich, there came a knock on the door. Harriet went to answer it, returning a minute later, accompanied by a young woman. This lady would like to talk to you, Hengist. Mr. Grump? The visitor inquired. That's me. Hengist garbled through a mouthful of cheese and beetroot sandwich. We met earlier this week at the solicitor's. Hengist remembered. Oh yes, of course, you're the secretary. Sorry, I can't remember your name. Doris, Mr. Grump. It's Doris? Of course it is, Doris. What brings you here? I'm sorry, but... I found out. You see, Mr. Henderson is off sickin'. Oh God, this is difficult. I don't know what to do. Harriet took sympathy on the young girl and interrupted her awkward stammering. Sit down, my love, she said while pouring her a cup of the ever-present and ubiquitous tea. Doris tried again. Mr. Grump? Please call me Hengist, Doris, Hengist said. Doris smiled. Well, Hengist, I found out today that you have had some property stolen, coins I think they were, and Mr. Shelby is responsible. Hengist and Harriet spun around to face the young girl so quickly, it startled Doris, who took a step backwards. I'm so sorry. It wasn't my fault, she blurted out. Don't look like that, darling, you're frightening the poor girl, Harriet said, touching Hengist's arm. Sorry, Doris. Maybe you could explain, Hengist said, forcing a smile onto his face. Yes. It's just I overheard a conversation today between Mr. Shelby and another man. Apparently, Mr. Shelby had illegally opened the letter sent to you, then somehow, no idea how, taken possession of some coins that belonged to you. But don't worry, I'm going to the police station when I leave here to report it. It's just I need your permission first. It's something to with duty of client confidentiality. Hengist hid the panic welling up inside him. Doris, we don't need to involve the police, I think. But he said, Don't fret, Doris, I know all about Shelby and his friend. Ronald Plumley? That's him, as I said, I know what's happened. May I ask you a personal question, Doris? You don't like this Mr. Shelby, do you? The stress got to her, and she started to fill up, just holding back the tears. How did you know that? She asked. Just a guess, sweetheart. But the floodgates had been opened. I hate him, I hate him. He's rude and horrible, a total bastard. He speaks to me like I'm dirt and I can't wait to see him dragged away in handcuffs, she spluttered between sniffs. Hengist smiled and said to Harriet. I think we found another member of the team, said Hengist. Then taking Doris's hand continued. The thing is, Doris, we have plans to teach your boss a lesson he won't forget. So, we'd rather the police weren't involved at the moment. I hope you understand. But, I was wondering if you would like to help us with the lesson? Oh yes, please. Anything to give that bastard what he's got coming. That's great, Doris. So what else did you overhear? Just that Mr. Shelby wants to sell the coins, and Ronald said they should wait. Well, that's something. They didn't say where the coins are by any chance, did they? No, sorry, no, wait. Mr. Shelby said half of the coins in Ronald Plumley's safe were his. So I guess that's where they are. Doris, you're a star, Hengist kissed her on the forehead. Now think hard, did they say anything else? No, not really, only that they're meeting at 7 o'clock tonight, to decide what to do. Did they say where? At the hall, I think. You've been a great help, Doris. Hengist, is there anything else I can do to help? I'm sure we'll think of something, Doris. Are you sure I shouldn't go to the police? She asked. No, Doris, it'll be fine. If you're sure, Hengist. That's my girl. Okay. You just go home now and carry on as normal. Of course, let me know if you hear anything else. And I'll be in touch very soon about how you can help. Do you have a telephone at home? No, sorry, I don't. Not to worry, I can call you at the office, I take it. Yes, I'm the only one who answers the phone. Doris sniffed one last time and smiled. You can rely on me, she said. That's good, you get off home now and don't worry, it's all in hand. Doris left to catch her bus home. Chapter 42. So what's next, Fagin? Harriet asked. Fagin? Yeah, I'm going to call you Fagin from now on. He took innocent young people and turned them into gang of thieves. Don't exaggerate, it's not like that. Harriet smiled as I said, what's next, Fagin? The hall? Maybe we can kill two birds with one stone up there. Let's go see what the Pringles have to say. Within 5 minutes, they were on the way to the hall. Turning into the hall's drive, they were stopped at the gatehouse security post. Only allowed to pass through after giving their names and the reason for their visit to the soldier on duty, who dutifully wrote it all down on his clipboard. As they dismounted at the kitchen door, Harriet said, I just thought, this is where that Ronald Plumley lives. Yes, of course it is, that's why we're here, what's the problem? Well, what if we bump into him? Very unlikely, as when I was here last, Mabel told me his rooms were in the east wing, which is on the other side of the hall from the kitchen. But if we do meet, I'll just act as if I don't recognize him. Entering the kitchen, they were greeted by Mabel with kisses and hugs and lots of smiles. Oh, Harriet, it's lovely to see you. Did you have a lovely honeymoon? Yes, thank you, Mabel. How are you? My leg plays up when it's cold, and Pringle has started snoring again. But beside from that, the conversation went on along these benign lines for a while, then Hengist interrupted. The reason we're here, Mabel, is I was wondering if you would be willing to help us with something a bit sensitive. I'm always ready to help you two lovely people, Mabel said, patting Harriet's hand. Then a thought crossed her mind. Oh? I know, don't tell me you're expecting. And you want me to be a godmother? No, nothing like that, Mabel, said Hengist. The old lady couldn't help letting a bit of disappointment show on her face. Harriet, quickly to placate the old lady, said, But when the time comes, you'll be first name on the list, promise. Mabel smiled at this. That's nice to know, so what can I help you with, Hengist? Well, Mabel, it's very difficult to explain. It's just, well, how can I put it? I think, maybe you could see your way, only if you feel comfortable, that is. Harriet looked up at the ceiling and rolled her eyes. It's simple, Mabel. We need your help to get back some coins that Ronald Plumley and one of his friends stole off Hengist. Mabel went silent for a minute. He stole coins off you, Hengist? What were you doing dealing with that man? I didn't even know you knew him. I don't know him, it's a long story, Mabel. Nothing surprises me about that man, he is a thoroughly unpleasant person. So the answer is yes, if I can help I will. Mind you, I'll have to check with Algie first. But how did it all come about, Hengist? As if on cue, Pringle entered the kitchen from the garden. What do you have to check with me, may I ask? That terrible man Ronald Plumley has stolen some coins that belonged to Hengist, and he was wondering if we would help get them back. His wife explained. Stole some coins. I don't believe it. Hengist interrupted. It's a very complicated and bizarre set of circumstances, Mr. Pringle. Do I have your word that what I tell you will go no further? Both Mabel and Pringle nodded agreement. Well? Hengist told them it all. When he'd finished, the old couple looked at each other. That's a fine pickle is that lot, I must say, Pringle said. Bizarre and complicated, you weren't kidding, Mabel added. Pringle was silent for a minute, then said, Hengist, although Ronald Plumley is without a doubt a difficult man to deal with, and undoubtedly a despicable individual, I couldn't condone anything illegal or any action that would be of detriment to Sir Tarquin or the Plumley estate. But darling, Mabel said. No, dear, I have his lordship to think of. Mabel started to protest, when there came a knock on the door that led to the house. The door then opened, and a gray-haired man in dire need of a haircut and a shave, shuffled more than walked into the room. Pringle shot out of his chair. Your lordship, what is the matter? Nothing, Pringle, I just thought I'd pop in and have a cup of tea. Why did you not ring the bell, sir? I would have brought you up a tray to your study. Well, Ronald is in there at the moment checking the estate accounts, and told me to make myself scarce for an hour. So I thought I'd get a cup of tea, Sir Tarquin said, making his way to the table. Hengist got up and pulled a chair back for the aging lord. Ah, he groaned as he sat down. He looked at Hengist through rheumy eyes. Hengist, the gas man, isn't it? Yes, sir, it is. Mrs. Pringle tells me you just got married. Yes, indeed, sir, I have. Mrs. Pringle keeps me up to date on all the news in the town, as I don't get around too much these days. Please, sir, may I introduce my wife, Harriet? Pleasure to meet you, Harriet. Harriet almost curtsied. Harriet? Not the Harriet who worked here for about 3 months to help Mrs. Pringle out one time when she broke a leg, was it? It was my ankle, sir. Mabel said. Ankle, yes, of course. Yes, sir, that's me, sir, Harriet confirmed. Well, it's lovely to meet you again, Harriet. Sir Tarquin sipped his tea and nibbled on a biscuit Mabel had pushed across the table for him, talking about the garden and the weather. When he'd finished his tea, he said, It's been lovely talking to you all. I'll go and see if Ronald has finished, so I can sit in the study now. He gets angry if I disturb him. When the door closed behind him, Mabel looked at her husband, who was going purple in the face. Not allowed into his own study, told, mind you, told to make himself scarce. And by that twat. Harriet and Mabel took a sharp intake of breath. Pringle looked at Hengist. We'll help you, Hengist, what do you need? Hengist smiled. Not sure yet, Mr. Pringle, we think the coins are in Ronald Plumley's safe. Do you know where that is? There's a big green metal thing that looks like a safe in the sideboard in the room he calls his study. I have to dust and clean it with him looking over my shoulder, Mabel said. That is indeed a safe, Pringle confirmed. Sounds like that's it then. Anything been happening with him that might, you think, be of interest to us? No, not really, Hengist. We've been up in the air, so to speak, because of the army being here, digging things up and cutting things down. Oh, they have made such a mess, Mabel said. Mind you, she added, if I was trying to find out stuff on anyone in this town, I'd ask Dorcas Fake. Yes, she's the one to ask, I agree, Hengist said, but can she keep it quiet? I don't want it all over the town. Dorcas and I go back years, we were in school together. You can trust her. And I know for a fact, she's got an axe to grind with Ronald Plumley. Why is that, Mabel? Harriet asked. It was when he first arrived back from East Africa. He reported Dorcas to the area's postmaster, because his letters weren't arriving before 11 a.m. She had to go in front of an area board that could have removed her as postmistress. Shall I give her a ring? Yes, but don't tell her everything yet, as the less people that know what we're up to, the better. Mabel nodded and left the table, crossed to a telephone on the wall, and picked up the handset, clicked the cradle up and down a few times, then a squawky voice could be heard on the other end. "Is that you, Dorcas?" "It's Mabel." "Yes, nice day. Listen, I can't tell you much at the moment as there's no time. But a few of us are getting together to teach your favorite friend Ronald Plumley a lesson. And I was wondering if you would like to help. I thought you might. Not sure yet. Just keep an ear to the ground for now, and I'll pop in tomorrow for a cuppa and give you the details." "You what?" "Is it about the what?" "You mean here at the hall, and he does what?" "God preserve us, no, is nothing sacred." "Or what, no?" "No, it's not about that to my knowledge, but it's interesting, I must say." "Okay. Give my best to Alfred, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye." Mabel hung up, then turned to face the others, who had only been party to one side of the conversion, were eager to know what was said. "Well," Hengist prompted. "She said she loved to help. And apparently Ronald Bloody Plumley calls every Wednesday no less for the services of certain type of lady." "What sort of lady?" Harriet asked. "Harriet, think about it," Hengist said and rolled his eyes. "What, here in the East Wing?" Pringle exclaimed. "Yes, darling, in the East Wing." The penny dropped for Harriet. The dirty sod. "And that's not all," Mabel continued. "He sometimes has the lady dress as a nun or little Bo Peep for the visit." "Bloody hell. Really?" "So Dorcas says," Mabel said. "That might be useful to know. Also, Ronald Plumley is meeting the other man who's involved. His name is Shelby," said Hengist. "I know him. Ferret-like man. He's just as rude and obnoxious as Ronald Plumley," said Mabel. "So I understand. Anyway, they are meeting here tonight at 7 o'clock, and I was wondering if there is any way I could listen in?" "I assume they would use the study," Pringle said. "Probably, I'd think. Is there anywhere in there I could hide?" Pringle considered this. There were some long curtains, sofas, and armchairs. "Shall we go and take a look?" "Is Plumley in at the moment?" Hengist asked. "Well, his car's here, at least it was 10 minutes ago. But if we go up to the East Wing, I can go in ahead and make sure the coast is clear," Pringle suggested. Hengist smiled. "Sounds like a plan, Mr. Pringle. If we're going, we better get on with it as time getting on." Leaving Mabel and Harriet sitting at the table, the two men headed to the East Wing. Reaching the door that connected the East Wing to the rest of the house, Pringle stopped. "Okay, Hengist, if you wait here, I'll go see if the course is clear." "Will do." Pringle opened the door and walked on in to the East Wing. As he approached the study door, he heard noises coming from further down the corridor. Passing the study, he walked on. Then realized the sounds he could hear was water being run and tuneless singing coming from the bathroom. Wisps of steam emanated from around the door, confirming Ronald Plumley was taking a bath. Pringle hurried back to Hengist. "We're in luck, he's in the bath. Come in quick, the study is the second door on the right." Both men scurried down to and through the door into the study. Both men looked around the room. There were indeed long curtains that hung in front of the large French windows that led out onto the patio. Hengist could no doubt hide behind them, but he might be there for an hour or so, and could be seen by anybody outside. The two long sofas and 3 armchairs in the room were again big enough to hide behind, but again the chances of being discovered was high, as he might be there sometime. Then Hengist noticed a door that obviously didn't lead to the corridor or to outside. The door had a louvered air vent high on one wall above it. "What's on the other side of that?" he asked. "Just a storeroom. We keep Sir Tarquin's Egyptian artifacts. There. You know, the ones he collected on his travels." "Is it locked?" Pringle turned the handle, and the door opened into the storeroom. "No, apparently not." "Let's take a look." They left the study and entered the storeroom. It was a large and cluttered room. Pringle flicked the light switch, nothing happened. Bloody bulbs gone. Hengist closed the door behind them, then pushed a wooden packing case against the door and climbed onto it. Opening the louvers of the air vent slightly, he could see most of the room. That's perfect. What's the time, please, Mr. Pringle? Pringle studied his watch. 6:25. Shelby is due at 7, so best you make yourself scarce and I make myself comfortable and just wait, I guess. Hengist pulled the box away from the door to allow Pringle to leave. See you later then, Hengist, good luck, and with that he was gone. Hengist looked around the room again. It was about 20 foot square, with a large bay window on one wall. And it was full of cases, boxes, some open, some closed, parcels, bundles of stick-like things, rolls of papyrus and several statues of varying sizes. The largest being an ornate painted wooden sarcophagus, standing against the wall in the far corner of the room. Hengist approached this mummy case, and noticed the front was hinged. There couldn't be anything inside, could there? He pulled at the seam between the edge of the lid and the base, and it slowly opened. Hengist nervously peered in. It was empty save for a few spider webs. Hengist closed the lid, relieved. He remembered reading somewhere that Howard Carter, when he opened King Tut's tomb in Egypt, was asked what he could see. He answered, wonderful things. Hengist thought this lot looked like a pile of junk. Hengist walked to the window and looked out. The sun had set, but he could still see the gravel drive and across the expansive lawn to the military positions, with their attendant trenches and camouflage nets. The odd soldier could also be seen walking from place to place carrying boxes or wooden cases. Turning back to the room, he realized there was another door that must open onto the corridor. It would be just his luck if someone wanted some of this junk tonight. So he crossed the room and pulled a packing case against the door. It wouldn't stop anyone getting in, but it would slow them down a bit. Hengist walked back to the box under the air vent, sat back down, and settled down to wait in the quickly darkening room. Hengist didn't have to wait too long, as 10 minutes later he heard someone walking down the corridor. Quickly clambered onto the box, and pressed his face to the crack in the air vent. Hengist watched as Ronald Plumley entered his study with a towel wrapped around his waist. He turned on a table lamp, then drew the heavy curtains. He then walked to the fireplace, taking hold of one of the wooden carved acorns that stood at each end of the mantelpiece. He turned it through 90 degrees, then repeated this to the acorn at the other end. Finally, pushing the center carved wooden rosette of the mantelpiece, there was a heavy click, and a hidden drawer popped out of the panel that held the rosette. He then retrieved the red leather-bound box from the drawer. Pushing the drawer closed, and returned the wooden acorns into their original positions. Then walked to the cupboard that housed the green safe, which was just out of Hengist's line of sight. There followed a series of clicks and clonks. Plumley then stood up, obviously having deposited the box into the safe. He then left the room. Hengist was considering what he'd just seen when a car pulled up outside. Soon a loud rapping could be heard as someone banged on the French windows of the study. Shelby received no reply to his knocking for 10 whole minutes, until Plumley returned to the study wearing a long bathrobe. Didn't you hear me knocking, Ronald? God, I've been out there for ages. Your own fault for being early, old boy. I was putting the old glad rags on. Scotch, old man? Plumley asked. Yes, please. Drinks poured, they sat down. Now what's all of this foolishness about needing money? It's all right for you, Ronald. You're doing great now with your allowance from your brother, living here rent-free, to say nothing about the percentage you cream off the Plumley estate for yourself. That must be substantial. And don't you forget who taught you the creative accounting that enabled you to do that. Yes, but we're talking about the coins, aren't we? Where are they now, by the way? Still in the safe where I put them, old man. You saw me put them in. That was then, this is now. You wouldn't mind showing me, would you? Your mistrust is hurtful, Shelby. I'd still like to see them. I thought you might, old man. Plumley then went through the ritual of opening the safe. Taking the red box out, he handing it to Shelby, who opened the box and run his fingers through the coins. They made a delightful chinking sound. Satisfied now, Plumley said, holding his hand out for the box. Shelby reluctantly closed the box and handed it back. Plumley placed it back in the safe and locked it. So, when are we going to sell them and spilt the money? Shelby whined. I think we could get rid of 3 or 4 of them next week if the dealer in Frambourne wants 4 more. That should keep you solvent for a while, old man. Then we'll reassess it again in a month or so. A month or so. It's the wise move, old boy, but if you desperate, we'll ask the dealer next week if he'll take them all. It'll probably mean the money he'll offer will go down, you know that. Well, it won't hurt to ask. That's agreed then, old boy. Yes, mind if I have another scotch, Ronald? Sorry, old man, Margaret is coming over about 8. You know the thing. Ronald opened his robe, revealing his outfit for the evening. He was wearing stocking suspenders, a pair of frilly French knickers, a peephole bra, and a long string of pearls hung around his neck. Shelby's face light up. I don't suppose you could call and see if her friend is available, as well, could you? Why not, old man? Everyone needs a hobby. Have you something suitable I could wear, Ronald? Of course, old man. You know the special trunk in my bedroom. Nip down there and take you pick. I'll call Margaret. Shelby was out of his seat and through the door like a shot. Plumley retied his robe. Then quickly removed the red box out of the safe and returned it to the mantelpiece hiding place. Then picking up the phone, called Margaret. Concluding the call, he sat back in armchair sipping his drink. Hengist, still on the box, thought, fuck me, I forgot it was Wednesday. He silently stepped down and sat on the box. All he could do now was wait. He looked over at the painted sarcophagus. It seemed to be smiling at him through the gloom. After a while, he heard Shelby return. He carefully climbed back onto the box. Shelby stood in the room, now also wearing a bathrobe. All arranged, old boy, the girls will be here shortly. That great, Ronald. What did you choose, by the way, old fruit? Shelby proudly removed his robe, then pranced round the room showing off his outfit of stockings, high heels, leather-studded thong with matching chest harness and a neck collar with a short lead attached. Very tasteful, I must say. Pour us a drink, old man, will you? Said Ronald, removing his robe, not to be upstaged. With pleasure, Ronald. Hengist climbed down and slumped onto the box. He had to get out of there. He crept quietly to the French windows, tried the handle, but it was locked and no key was visible. He went back and sat on the box. He sat there for 45 minutes, that seemed more like half a lifetime. He heard another car pull up on the gravel outside the window. He yet again climbed onto the box. The girls are here, old fruit, said Plumley, opening the door to the patio. 2 women, each wearing long trench coat, walked in. One carried a small suitcase. Welcome, ladies, so glad you could make it. May I take you coats? He said while drawing the curtains behind them. Evening, Ronald, nice outfit, I must say. I hope you've been a bad boy this week. Indeed I have. You've met Lisa, I take it? Margaret asked, putting the case down on the table, and removed her coat, revealing her fishnet stockings and black satin corset. Lisa also removed her coat, under which she wore a skimpy nurse uniform. On seeing the nurse outfit, Shelby omitted a squeak of pleasure. Yes, we've met Lisa before, Ronald admitted. Quick as a flash, Margaret stepped forward and delivered a sound slap on Plumley's buttocks. Yes, what, Ronald? Yes, mistress, he winced in reply. Lisa took the cue and grabbed Shelby's lead and pulled him close and whispered in his ear. I'm Nurse Lisa, and I believe you have severe swelling that needs attention. Shelby gave another squeak in response. Hengist watched on through the air vent as things developed. He saw many things over the next 30 minutes that shocked him. He liked to think he was an open-minded soul who would try most things, but he was watching things tonight that had never even entered his most sordid dreams. Lisa sitting astride Shelby's back, pulling on his lead as riding him around the room if he was some sort of pony, while Plumley was given a fierce spanking across Mistress Margaret's knee, was bad enough. But the audio accompaniment added a whole new dimension to the scene. Ronald Plumley's pitiful "Thank you, Mistress Margaret," after each slap on his buttocks, and Shelby's hoarse impression were just two. At one point Margaret retrieved a large rubber phallus out of the case, and Hengist, on seeing the size of the phallus, thought, "Christ, she must be joking." She wasn't. It then crossed Hengist's mind that a troop of mounted cavalry could trot down the corridor outside unheard by the four in the other room. It was time to go. But as he stepped down off the box, he stumbled, lost his balance, fell against the wall, kicking the box over with a clatter as he went. He froze. All four people in the study also stopped doing what they were at. "What was that?" exclaimed Margaret. "It came from in there," Lisa said, pointing at the storeroom door. Shelby and Ronald rushed to the door, turned the handle and pushed it open a few inches, and hit the overturned box. Pushing the door harder, it moved a bit more. Together, Shelby, 1, 2, 3, both men pushed the door open and half fell into the room. They looked around. "Can you see anything, Ronald?" "No, nothing." Both men fumbled around in the darkness. "Get the torch in the bureau drawer, Shelby." The torch fetched, they continued their search. They looked behind boxes and under dust sheets, then the torch beam lit up the sarcophagus against the wall. Shelby pointed at it and mouthed, "In there." They approached the painted mummy case. Ronald yanked the lid open. It was empty. "That box must have just fallen over, Ronald." "I guess so, old boy. There's no one here, is there?" They looked over the room once more, then went back into the study, and was soon back in swing of things. Hengist stood panting in the dark, on the other side of the door to the main house. Picking himself up after the fall, he had quickly pulled the boxes aside, and rushed through into the corridor, closing the door behind him, just as Plumley and Shelby forced their way through the other door to the storeroom. He then ran down the corridor as quick as he dared in the pitch blackness, and into the main house. When his heart rate came out of the danger zone, he made his way back to the kitchen through the darkness.